Okay, so we're still dealing with the pets, and we have our frequency distribution. I just shifted it up on the screen a little bit so that we can do the graphs. So now we're going to do a frequency bar graph. So let's label it as such. We're going to do a frequency bar graph. So with a frequency bar graph, we're going to create our x and y axes. Our x-axis is going to consist of our categories. So we have cats, dogs, rabbits, and fish. And then our y-axis, first of all, we're going to label it as frequency because that's what we're dealing with. So frequency, and we want to be able to include all the frequencies, which goes up to 8. So we're going to number it 2, 4, 6, 8. Remember, consistent indices, counting by 2s, counting by 3s, counting by 1s, as long as they're consistent. And then we're just going to create bars. So we have 7 cats, 8 dogs, 1 rabbit, and 3 fish. And that is our frequency bar graph. Straightforward. Remember, the bars do not touch one another. We have to have consistent indices, and I want to see it labeled as frequency. Whatever the y-axis is, I want to see that labeled. You don't have to label this as pets. Okay? So there's our frequency bar graph. Well, what if I want to do a relative frequency bar graph? So we're just going to make this relative frequency bar graph. What's the difference when I make it a relative frequency bar graph? Just the fact that we're going to be using the relative frequency on the y-axis. So I'm going to come here. Again, I need my categories on the bottom. Cats, dogs, rabbits, fish. On the y-axis, we're going to deal with relative frequency, so we label it as relative frequency. And then I'm going to need to fit these in, so we're going up to 0.42. So 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. So now I'm ready to create my bar graph. And with my bar graph, it's just a matter of looking at these and creating the bar. So cats, 0.37. So it comes up here almost up to 4. Dogs, 0.42. A little over 0.4. Rabbits, 0.05. Halfway up to that 0.1. And fish, 0.16. So a little above halfway between 0.1 and 0.2. And now we have our relative frequency bar graph. Again, they don't touch. We label the y-axis to say relative frequency. We use these numbers here to determine what it is, and notice consistent indices, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. So I'm counting by 0.1s. And we've listed out all of the categories. Remember, the categories don't necessarily have to be put in this order. I just always do them right off of the category order here. But you could put them in any order as long as they're done correctly. So that's a relative frequency bar graph. Okay, so now let's do a pie chart. Remember, a pie chart is that circle. So a pie chart is a circle. You always start top center. So there we go, I'm going right to top center. You always start with the largest category, going to the smallest category, going in clockwise fashion. And you always put the percentage in here along with the category name. So our largest category is dogs with 8 in it. And we look at degrees. Remember, this is where the degrees column comes into play. We look at that and say, okay, it's 151.2 degrees. I know all the way down would be 180. And I know that's 90. So 152 is going to be somewhere around there. I'm not going for exact, but close enough. So that's 151.2 degrees, more or less. So that is dogs. And we want to make sure that we look at the percent column, not the degrees column. That's 42%. And then our next would be cats. Cats 133 degrees. Now remember, that's starting from here. So that would be 90. That would be 180. So about halfway between 90 and 180 is going to be about 133.2. So that's cats. And again, the percent column, 37%. Then our next one is fish at 57.6 degrees. So 90 would be about here, about half would be 45. So maybe somewhere around there. And that's fish. And 16%. Then our final category, rabbits, 18 degrees. I don't have enough space here to put that in. So I'm going to say rabbits. And remember, it's not degrees, it's percent, 5%. And this is our pie chart for the pets. We always, of course it's a circle, we always start top dead center, go clockwise, start with the largest category, use degrees to get it approximately in the right area. Basically 51 degrees I know is more than 90 and less than 180. So it should be somewhere between that 90 and 180. It shouldn't be outside of that range. This we should be able to figure out. So we do that, include the percent, make sure you write the percent. Don't make the mistake of putting degrees in there. The only place I should see degrees is in a column letting you know how to split this up. And then when you start the second one, make sure you start at that point. Don't start back at the fitting and go at the beginning and say, hey, 133.2 degrees and end up with it in here. You're starting here, so now you're doing it in comparison to that point, category and percentage, and do the rest of them. And if you can't fit in the space, put that line out, put the category and the percent there. So just a quick example, working through a problem with people's pets, for figuring out the frequency distribution, the frequency bar graph, relative frequency bar graph, and a pie chart.